I absolutely love to see vintage finishes and processes brought to modern times through digital artwork. I also like the idea of making some more complicated and messier techniques a little easier to do in digital format when I don't feel like getting my hands dirty. One medium that I really enjoy is Linocut. There is something so beautiful and tactile about the textures that Linocut creates, and this printmaking technique is actually kind of like a variation of woodcut, which is basically just a relief print technique where the designer draws an image onto the surface of, say, something like a wood block, and then uses tools to carve out the print, which then separates at different levels. And the leftover surface prints, and then the non-printing parts are basically removed with the carving. With Linocut, a basic sheet of linoleum is used as the relief surface, and the process is basically the same, where you sketch the image and then use carving tools to remove the non-printing parts of the block, kind of like stamp making. You can then use the block similar to a stamp, where you ink the block and then place it on paper to create the image. In today's tutorial, I'm going to walk you through how to translate this process to the digital format using Procreate on your iPad. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Creative Studio. If you're new here, hi, I'm Jen, the creative behind this channel. I'm a Latina freelance graphic designer, illustrator, and online educator based out of the Midwest, and I run Bella and Sophia Creative Studio. In addition to the tutorials that you can find on this channel, you can also find more creative courses over on my learning platform, learncreatedesign.com. I'm a huge advocate for sharing knowledge in accessible ways, and YouTube and the internet are some of my favorite ways to do so. Now, as I mentioned at the top of this video, this week's tutorial will be focusing on taking the traditional Linocut medium into the digital realm. We will be creating a Linocut inspired print on the iPad. I'm going to walk you through my process and the brushes that I use to translate this traditional tactile medium into the digital world. I hope you have fun while we're creating today. Let's get started. To start the process off, obviously we're going to want to jump into Procreate, so I already have it launched. And what we'll want to do is just create a new file. I'm just going to do a square file so that I can share some of these on Instagram, but if you want to do a longer print style, like an 8.5 by 11 or something like that, you can choose to do that as well. But I'm just going to do kind of like a square print, and that way I can print it if I want, but then I can also utilize it on social media on something like Instagram. So I'm going to select, I have one that's already set up that's 3000 by 3000 pixels, but if you didn't have a size like that, you can hit this little plus icon to create a new canvas that is in the size parameters of your choices. So you can update the measurements here on the side to pixels and then just type in 3000 pixels by 3000 pixels. And I'm going to have my DPI at 300 because this is something that I actually might want to print in the future. And then I'm going to select done. And then I'm going to hit create, and it'll create a new file for me. So when I create this new file, what we are going to do is basically place our image on this, manipulate it so that we can get it to look as if it was a Linocut, kind of like a block print. We're going to cut out an image. You can do this by hand. You can draw by hand. You can do a side-by-side view if you wanted, but just for the ease of the tutorial and for those of you who are more beginners who may not feel comfortable drawing, I'm going to show you a simple way to do this process. So before we get into the nitty-gritty here in Procreate, what I want to do is go into my web browser, and I have a few places that I like to source images. Unsplash is great, Pixabay, but then there's also the Biodiversity Heritage Library, which is fantastic. They have a whole bunch of open domain, non-copyright images that you can go through and utilize for your artwork. It's absolutely beautiful. The biodiversitylibrary.org is the original website, and they are the organization that basically has pulled together this amazing library of visuals, of vintage imagery, of animals and plants and things like that. So this is a fantastic resource to utilize. But I also like using places like Pixabay and Unsplash. I'm thinking that a butterfly might be a great option for this Linocut because you have a nice kind of combination of textures and details and blocky areas and white areas. So I think I'm going to utilize this butterfly. I'm going to select download free, and then I'm going to get this pop-up and I'm going to select download. And then once I've downloaded it, it's going to go into my files. So in order to get it into Procreate, I need to get it into my my image system. So I'm going to pull up from my dock bar. I'm going to select this little file icon, that's my file system, and I'm going to go to my recent files, or you can also go into your downloads and you'll be able to find wherever your file downloaded. And I have it right here, so I'm going to select the select icon in the upper right hand corner, and then I'm going to tap on my image so that I get that little blue icon. And once I have that blue icon, I'm going to select in the bottom menu bar here, share. And then I'm going to scroll down in my pop-up options here and click on Save Image. And it's going to save that image into my photo roll. So I'm going to swipe up, and then I'm going to just take my Apple Pencil and swipe this out so I can close out of that file system. And then I'm going to tap back into Procreate. And then I'm going to go into my menu options in the upper left-hand corner. And I'm going to select this wrench icon. And I'm going to select add, and I'm going to insert a photo. And then I'm going to select that photo that I added to my photo roll, which is the butterfly. And I'm just going to tap out of it by selecting that little arrow. And it's going to deselect everything. And then what we're going to do first is we just kind of want to get an outline so that we can fill this with color, and then utilize some fun brushes to kind of take away parts of that color to create the impression of the Linocut. So in order to do that, you can use other software that you feel comfortable with to remove the background. But what's nice is that in Procreate, we can use the select options. So we're going to go into our select tool. It's that little squiggly line. It's the third icon from the left where it says gallery. And then we're going to get these. We're going to get this pop-up at the bottom, and we want to select automatic. And then what we're going to do is tap on the gray in the image. Keep in mind, you'll want to find a picture that doesn't have too much background busyness, something with a plain background. You can do this with other backgrounds. It's just going to be a little bit more complicated, but that's why I went with this like nice neutral gray. All right, once I've selected my selection option, I'm going to select automatic. And then what I want to do is tap on the gray and drag it to the right. And I want to make it so that everything that was that dark, that light gray becomes this dark gray. And it's going to basically shimmy up to the edges of the butterfly. Once I'm done with that, I'm going to select my little wrench icon again. And then I'm going to select cut. And it's going to remove the background. So what I'm going to do now is go into my menu options here in my layers in the upper right hand corner. I'm going to select my background color and I'm going to uncheck mark it. And now you see that there is no gray background. It looks gray, but that's because that's just the empty Procreate shell on the file here. But there is no color. So even if we were to turn back on this background layer and say we wanted to update the color from white to something else, you'll see that everything around the butterfly is now that pinkish color versus the gray. So I'm going to undo that. I'm going to turn off my background color so you can see what we're working with. And I'm actually going to increase this butterfly in size a bit. So I'm going to select my arrow tool here in the upper left-hand corner. And then I'm going to get the little marching ants selection, and I'm just going to pull. And you'll want to make sure that uniform is selected so that it doesn't mess with your proportions. So I'm going to pull from the corner and increase the size of this butterfly just a bit. And then when I'm done, I'm going to tap on my arrow to deselect. We have the silhouette of the butterfly. And what we'll want to do is add a new layer. So we're going to select plus in our layers menu here. It's going to add a new layer, and then now that we have the butterfly removed from its background and we've added a new layer, what we want to do is create a selection so that just the silhouette of the butterfly is selected in this first layer here. So first let's rename the layer. We're going to select the layer, tap where it says layer 1, click on rename, and just name it original image. And then we're going to tap on the little butterfly icon itself again. And then we want to click on select. And it's going to select the butterfly itself. And then we're going to go back into our layers, select layer 2. And then we are going to update our color here in the color icon wheel. And we're going to change it to black. And then we're going to drag that color on top of the butterfly, and it'll fill it completely to create kind of like this silhouette. All right, so now let's deselect everything by tapping on the selection tool. And then I'm going to rename this layer Linocut. So I'm going to tap where it says layer 2, select rename in the pop-up, and then just update it to Linocut. Now that we've done this, what I like to do is kind of rearrange our layers so that we can see what we're working on. So I'm going to select this original image and I'm going to bring it to the top of my layers here so that it's on top of the black. And then I'm going to select the little N icon here, and I'm going to adjust the opacity just so that the black shows through, but so that I can still see the details of the line work. Okay, now we're going to tap on our layers again to close that, and then we want to tap on the Linocut layer itself. And then essentially what we're going to do is anywhere there is a color like white or orange here, we're going to remove that using the eraser tool, and then anything that's in black, it's going to stay. So you just want to make sure though that you're on the Linocut layer. So I'm going to select my eraser tool. I'm going to make sure I'm on that Linocut layer. I'm going to select my eraser tool, and then I'm going to go into my brush library, and I have a bunch of fun brushes that I've downloaded over the last few months that were freebies. Some from creators like Abbie Nurse, who has some amazing brushes on design cuts. She has a really fantastic tutorial as well on how to do her version of Linocuts in Procreate that I'll link down below. But she's got some really fun brushes that you can utilize in a freebie pack that she shared. And then I also just have some downloads in my imported brushes here. And then I have some freebies from Missy Meyer. And these are just really nice kind of like dry texture brushes, printing paper, chalkboard kind of brushes that have a bit of texture and grit and grain within the brush. So that will be really helpful. So what I'm going to do though is select this Linocutter brush that I have as my eraser. So I'm going to select my eraser option. I'm going to go into my imported. I'm going to scroll up to my Linocut brushes and some of those other imported brushes that have texture. And I'm going to select Linocutter. And what's nice is that it has a nice kind of like pressure sensitivity that gives you variety within your line shape. So that's the big thing that we want to keep in mind with this, is that we want variety within our line shapes. And then we'll add some texture. So I'm going to adjust the size by going into this left panel here and lowering the size of this brush just a bit. And then I'm going to go in and erase anywhere where there's that color or white. And it doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, you kind of want it to be imperfect because that's kind of the character of Linocut, because essentially you're kind of like carving out pieces. So it's not going to be perfect. It's really kind of tactile and handmade. So we're just going to go through, and anywhere there's that white area or kind of like the blank space is where we're going to essentially delete color. And like I said, don't be precious about this. You want to have it feel kind of messy and a little bit more handmade and textured. And the big thing you want to keep in mind though is making sure you're on that correct layer. what I can do is take that original image from my layers, drag it to the bottom under the Linocut, and uncheck mark it so that I turn it off, and then we can see what the final Linocut looks like. I like the imperfections. Like I said, we want it to feel textured. So the big thing though that I think we should do though is add a little bit of grit and grain to some of the black bits and pieces, because that's kind of like the beauty of it. When you're doing these prints, especially when you stamp it, you sometimes get that residual ink. So let's work on that. So what I'm gonna do is create a new layer on top of my Linocut layer. I'm gonna go into my layers options here, select the plus icon, and then what I wanna do is tap on my layer options here, and I'm going to create a clipping mask, and you'll see that there's this little arrow that kind of pops up showing that it'll only clip into wherever there's color in the layer underneath it. So this allows me to kind of like freely add some of this without having to worry about it getting outside of the butterfly. So I'm going to go into my brush tools now, and I'm going to go into my imported tools, and I'm going to check out some of these. So I've got this grunge pack from True Grit, and it's the True Grit stamps, and it has kind of like just these stampy effects that are splatters and dust and things like that. So I'm going to utilize the stamp 5 for this, and then I'm going to change my color from black to white, and I'm going to just kind of add bits and pieces here. And then I'm going to go in, and I have stamp 7, which is just kind of like, it just adds a bit of dust and flecks to it. So I'm going to add some of that. Adjust the size. All right, and I think I like the way this looks. It's very grungy. We have a bit of that kind of like dust fleck kind of thing going on, and we've removed the sections that we wanted to remove within the butterfly. So we're done with the Linocut itself. Now let's add a bit of fun to the background. So I'm going to turn the background color back on, and I'm going to change it to something else. Currently our background is just white, so we're going to turn that back on by tapping on the layers and then clicking on the little check mark option here, and it turns the background color on, and then we're going to tap where the color is, and it'll pop up our color wheel here, and we're going to adjust the color. I'm going to do something kind of fun, spring or summer feeling, so I'm thinking kind of like a really pretty green kind of color. And I want it to be just a bit dark so that we can apply some texture that you'll be able to see. So what we'll do now is go back into our layers options, select the plus icon to add a new layer, and then what we'll want to do is go into our brush options and select a brush to add some texture. So depending on the brushes you have, and like I said, I'll share these brushes that I have in the description box, but I have some freebies like the printing paper and the Dusty Lino print flat texture is what I think I will use. So I'm going to select that flat texture, and then I'm going to go into my color options here. I'm going to select white, and then I'm going to select that brush tool. I'm going to make sure that the size is the highest size that I can get it to be, and then I'm just going to paint over without picking up my pencil. All right, so now what you'll see is you have this really nice texture, but what we obviously want to do is kind of like blend it into the green. So what we'll do is go into our layers and then work with our blend mode. So on that layer that we just filled, we can rename it really quickly and change it to texture or paper texture. And then we're gonna tap on the N so that we get our blend modes in our options. And I'm gonna change this from normal to multiply. And it's really, really subtle, but what you'll see is you get that bit of texture in the green, and it gives it more of like a realistic effect. And I think it's really pretty. And then that is how we kind of get this really beautiful Linocut effect. We can add text to the bottom if you wanted. You could even turn something like this into a brush stamp, but that'll be something for a different video. But that's it for today. I hope you all found this helpful, and I hope that if you do create something similar to this, make sure you share it on social media like Instagram, and then you can tag me at Bella Sophia Creative. I'd love to see what you made. And that is it for my process on creating Linocut inspired prints in Procreate. I hope you found the rundown of these tips helpful as you work on exploring new styles of art in the Procreate app. If you like this tutorial, consider giving this video a thumbs up, please, and thank you so much for stopping by today. And if you're not already, make sure you subscribe to my channel so you can stay up to date on my latest tutorials and course launches. If you're looking for other ways to connect with me, you can also find me online at www.bellasophiacreative.com. And you can find all of my social media handles linked in the description box below. If you like tutorials like this and you're considering more in-depth creative courses, definitely check out my classes over on learncreatedesign.com. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!